Hey guys, welcome to DotNetCrunch. So today we'll be looking at access modifiers in TypeScript. So basically, without wasting a single second, let's flip to Visual Studio. Over here, I have created access modifiers.ts. You can find these files from earlier sessions. In case you are not familiar with what these files are, you can refer to the previous videos. So this is like part 5 of my TypeScript video series, so you can refer to earlier videos. You can check the I button link for the playlist. Okay, let's move forward. So access modifiers in TypeScript, there are three basically access modifiers: public, private and protected. So let's look at them in action with the help of a code snippet. I'll be covering public and private in a same example, and then later we will cover protected access modifier. Okay, so let's first define a class. Let me give you an example of an employee class. This is my class, and in the class let me include employee name, employee ID and employee name. So employee ID would be a number and employee name would be string. Okay, so we have defined two of the data members. So let me tell you guys, by default, if we don't specify any access modifiers over here like public or private, by default the members of the class are public in TypeScript. So if you want to make your data members accessible everywhere in the program, like outside the class or in other files, you no need to specify public explicitly. It's by default public. All the members are public by default. Okay, so but still let me put it over here explicitly. So because we are covering a public data type, so I'll just explicitly put it over here. If I don't put this public keyword, it's by default public also, right? Over here it's public. I'm not putting public keyword. So I've created the class with two of the data members, and let me create an object. Let emp equal to new of the employee class. I'm just creating an object and I'll try to access their members. So see over here, both the members are accessible, right? So employee ID, I'll give it 101, and then employee name, let me give the employee name as a Rob. Okay, so in order to execute this, we can just write an console log statement and print it as we did it in our video, but let it be. We are just over here demonstrating the concept of public and private access modifiers. So the thing is, this particular employee ID is specified as public, and employee name is also public. So both the members are accessible outside of the class. And if I create one more file and try to access there giving the reference of an employee, these two members will be accessible over there. Now coming to second access modifier, which is private. So private access modifiers are visible to only a particular class to which they belong, right? So if I specify here employee ID as private, so see, you can see it started giving me an error, compile time error, right? It says employee ID is private and only accessible within class employee. So over here within this class, if we try to access that by creating some method, or maybe in a method I want to use that. Okay, employee ID as number. So let's say this is my dummy method, or some method wherein I want to access employee ID. I can access it. Here it is not giving me any error because it is within the scope of this class. Okay, but over here outside the class I cannot access a private data member. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show with the help of this example. If I again make this as a private, again it will give me error, compile time error. So private modifiers, private data members are only accessible within the class or defined, whereas public members are accessible everywhere, outside the class, inside the class. Okay, so let's start. Let's look at the example of protected. So what do you mean by protected? Basically, protector is the third type of access modifier in TypeScript, wherein it is similar to private access modifier, but except the protected members can be accessed in a derived class. So I hope you are familiar with the concept of inheritance. So inheritance, what happens is like there is a base class and derived class and derived class. So base class is the one which has the members. Let's say employee is our base class, and there will be one class, let's say class employee, any type of employee, let's say IT employee, class IT employee, that is deriving the base class. So if we mark one of the member as protected, it will be accessible only within the immediately derived class and not beyond that. So let's have a look with the help of an example. So let us create one example over here. I'll just remove this and have this as an protected access modifier example. Okay, and let me create one class quickly, employee class. So what I will do, I'll just copy paste this snippet. We can remove this is of no use, but let me keep this over here as it is. I'll remove it from here. Okay, so this is my class. Okay, and employee, I think, yeah, we have already used employee class over here, so I'll not be able to use it again. Let me do one thing over here. I'll just rename it as employee 1 so that we can use an employee class. Okay, so class employee, which has public employee ID and public employee name, and I'll have one more property, let's say that will be my protected member, or else what we can do is, let's go with the to data member only, and I'll make this as a protected. So my employee ID is now specified as a protected. Okay, which means whatever class which derives employee, like which extends employee class, will be able to access the protected member, right? So the concept of protected access specifier, as I specified earlier, is similar to that of private access modifier, except that protected members can be accessed using their derived classes. So we'll see that. So this is my employee class. I'll create one constructor for this constructor. I want to initialize two of the members, which is employee ID, and employee ID is number, comma, employee name. Okay, so we have a constructor ready over here. Let me initialize those variables. So this, using this object, we can access the current objects. So dot employee ID equals to employee ID, right? So employee ID, and over here these are not the same. You can specify these, no need to have the same name convention which we are having over here. These are different, right? I can specify ID and just name over here. That will also work, so that you are not confused. Okay, so this dot employee ID, so this is referring to the employee class, employee object. So object of an employee dot employee name equals to name. This is how we can initialize parameter. It's a parameterized constructor. We can initialize a value of the objects of a class. So now this class is completed. Now let me define another class. As I was telling you, the type of employee may be a class IT employee. We'll create one class with the name IT employee, which will extend our employee class. Okay, so this is the concept of inheritance. So this is our base class and this is our derived class. Okay, so in the derived class I'll have one private variable. Let's call it as department. Okay, so department will be of type string, and over here again I need to have a constructor. Let me copy this and paste it over here. Over here I need to specify the code like for the specifying. This is the constructor which will be initializing the objects of through derived class. It will also initialize the objects of parent class. So how we have two members, we'll need to include department as well over here. So for department, what I can do is I need to write it like the order sequence doesn't matter. I'll add it over here, department short form, and that will be of type string. Okay, and over here I need to specify this dot the current object department is equals to department. So as this is this object corresponds to the current object, so we over here we are into the IT employee class. So this will only be this object over here this keyword over here can access only the department data member. Okay, so but we want to initialize ID and name of our base class. So for that we use super name. Okay, so whenever in the concept of inheritance is such that like whenever you have a base class and a derived class, you create an object of your derived class, so that the derived class constructor takes care of initializing the member of base class. Okay, so what we have done over here is we are not demonstrating the concept of inheritance. Our purpose is to show the use of protected access modifier. So over here employee ID is a protected access specifier, like employee ID is being marked with protected modifier, so which says that employee ID will only be accessible in the derived class and it won't be accessible outside that. So let us initialize, let emp1, as I have already created an emp in over here above. So emp1 equals to new IT employee, and over here, so as we have created an parameterized constructor, I can initialize it. I can pass on the ID over here. Let me 105 and name of an employee Bob, and who works into the department IT. Okay, so I have initialized it. Now this worked perfectly fine for me. Like now we have an employee object, employee1 emp1 dot, so emp1 dot emp name. So emp name is a public name that is accessible, but if we try to access it, if we try to access the protected member, emp1 dot employee ID, it gives me a compile time error, right? It says employee ID is protected and only accessible within class employee and its subclasses. So over here we are able to access it. However, we are not able to access here we are already accessing it, right, through the within the constructor, but we are not able to access this outside the class. So this scope is then outside of both the classes, so here we are not able to access it. So I hope you guys have understood what I was trying to show here. So if we try to access the protected member, here the protected member is employee ID for us. If we try to access protected member outside of the class, we get this compile time error that it is not accessible. So that's all guys for this video. Please subscribe to our channel and comment down your queries, or maybe what topics you want